T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Hermes and Hades installment. It's your favorite duo, Michael and Candace, here in the flesh. Here for you to break down the eclipse that will transform your entire existence. As this is a bridge to the beginning of the end of the world, referencing the end of the karmic cycle that happened last time in '93, when literal monsters were born into the world with super psychic reality warping powers who are going to come of age and facilitate the end of everything you hold dear. Welcome to the apocalypse.
This eclipse, man, this eclipse. As you guys know, we talked to you about the different zodiac seasons. We also did the most recent new moon eclipse that we had in Taurus. This one, this full moon lunar eclipse that's going to be taking place in Scorpio, around 25 degrees of Scorpio, packs a real punch. We want to talk to you guys all about it, help you understand it, and unpack all of the details of this particular lunation. Holy smokes is all I can say. I mean, full moons in Scorpio usually are, but I guess really we should look at it more archetypally, because having a full moon in the midst of Taurus season, when everything's alive, we also realize that there is this closing of chapters, and that there are things that need to end or things that need to transition or die off to better facilitate the growth. So probably coming off of that high of that new moon eclipse in Taurus, with all the super Venus-Neptune conjunctions and the Uranus conjunction to the eclipse itself, this is like when all of the love drugs start wearing off and reality hits of what you really need to be willing to let go to embrace your new life. And it can be rather startling, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I just like the science behind it, as far as like, you know, the desire of Scorpio,
Right.
which is social, and you're feeling that while you're establishing the individual manifestation in Taurus, which is your value. So we know Scorpio's 8th house, we know Taurus is 2nd house, and this is you feeling, right, where in the right social environments your value is accepted, who's receptive to it. And that's where that square to Saturn and Aquarius, the 11th house, what I've learned is you have your value, then you have what you deal with other people's value. And if people trust you with their money, if I were to take advantage of that, we need the 11th house collective to enforce that, you know? So this is how your value is influenced by other people's willingness to trust in it, and then the collective narrative that will clash with your own. Because you may think that you're meant to be a 10-10 singer, but Simon Cowell thinks you're trash. That's the square between Aquarius. Like,
yeah, I could see that.
You know, you may think that your album is the greatest, but it only sells 1,000 copies, and that's that harsh like reality check. So you know what I mean? Now that doesn't mean that your album really sucks. It just means it didn't sell, which can allude to that. But that's really, you know, despite how the other people feel, own your value, but don't be so delusional to your value that you don't take into account the collective too. It's very tricky.
I mean, I think what's really interesting is, you know, obviously a full moon is going to be some kind of like turning point from what you were working on 6 months prior.
Yeah.
So really we have to turn the clocks back to mid-November of 2021 and take a look at what was happening then. Now, we had a eclipse that was a full moon eclipse in Taurus at that time, and it was around 26 degrees of Taurus. So this is, from whatever was kind of physically taking place, what's changing since then. It's also now the completion of what was the new moon in Scorpio that we had during Scorpio season in 2021. I guess the one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is like, when you think of like fertilizer, right? Especially anybody who's like into like gardening or anything. If you think of like fertilizer, like some of the best things that you can actually give your garden or give plants is like nutrient. So whether you're into composting, if you want to use actual manure, Scorpio, if you want to use coffee grounds, eggshells, like trash, how that breakdown actually feeds and gives new life to the plants.
That's so true.
So when you're looking at an eclipse like this, with the moon very close in conjunction to the south node, first of all, it's super emotional. It's an emotional clearing. And we're emotionally detaching and karmically detaching from old, painful ways of being. So there can be this really kind of heavy emotional release of things that are like toxic. And we're going to realize that to some extent, some of the breakdown or some of the shit that comes up or some of the endings that happen or the death that happens or things that are scary, that's the fertilizer for the new life, for the new growth.
Yeah. Right. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. And especially with the death and new beginnings. And a lot of this new moon, a lot of this full moon gives me the impressions of a fundraising initiative. It's like if it was the other way around with North Node and Sun in Scorpio, you're taking your money and you're deciding who you trust. Like, who do you trust to invest in? But this is you finding who's investing in you.
Yeah.
But with Saturn in Aquarius, it's like now there's an official group that you can go into that's specialized. It's not just a wide audience. It's like, here's an actual squad of people, and it's going to focus more in this niche group.
Yeah.
Who can invest in you, and it's tightening that more too.
I think it's going to be like crowdfunding. I think it's also going to be pooling resources. And when I say resources, I don't mean like just money, but different forms of currency, what people have to offer beyond currency. What if it's food, if it's natural resources, if it's land. And keep in mind, this is also coming off of 2 weeks prior having had a new moon eclipse. So this is the aftermath. It's almost like you get one 6-month period jammed into this 2 weeks. And it's like, as I've said, eclipse periods, anything goes, things come and go, people are born, people die, like major kind of like fated events happen during these periods. But I keep looking at Mars being the ruler, as is Pluto, and any which way you slice it, Mars is in a harmonious aspect. Mars is the star of this fucking eclipse.
Yeah.
Mars trines the moon. It sextiles Pluto. It conjuncts Neptune. It conjuncts also Jupiter. It sextiles the sun. Like, Mars almost makes an aspect to everything.
Yeah.
It semi-sextiles Saturn and Venus. Like, literally, Mars is the star of the show.
Yeah.
And I think with the conjunction to Neptune, it's like the collective dissolving.
And also action, because I've learned that wherever Mars conjuncts, it's like the director yelling action on the set of a play. I remember I was aware of someone's existence, and I looked at our composite chart, I looked at our chart, and I realized that, first of all, I was aware of her on social media, and Mars was in Libra, but Mars was transiting her North Node in my vertex, and that was where that fated point it activated. So that's what made me realize Mars is an activator. Like, Mars really just pushes stuff forward. So I started to pay more attention to that. And after the Neptune conjunction, it's going to go on Jupiter. So it's going to expand and push forward a lot.
There's something brewing during this eclipse that will not come to light until Mars comes into Aries. Yeah. And then furthermore, when Mars goes into Taurus later in the summer, and it activates this point. So
it's like seeing an event, and then you find out what really happened like a week or two after. Like, you thought you knew what it was, but it's like more information comes out after. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty wild. I mean, I guess I feel better knowing that Mars is in such harmonious aspect that it doesn't negate the Saturn T-square. And, as I've said with all eclipses, big things happen. These eclipse cycles obviously are affecting the fixed sign. So if you are a Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you're really feeling it. But The truth is that eclipses affect everyone. When we have planets that are touching the nodes or squaring Saturn, or if there are any squares happening to the nodes, we feel it. So actually April all the way into mid-May, we've seen planets touch Saturn in Aquarius saying, hey, now is the time to crystallize, commit, like think more seriously about your goals or about what you're aligning with or what your dreams are. And if you're frustrated, then work harder to be able to either break it down or build it up. Remember, Aquarius is about elevation. So it's almost like there's this growing pain kind of coming from this. That's, wow, okay, we're elevating. Saturn's holding that space for squaring the nodes and squaring the moon. But with the moon south node, it's like, okay, well, what about the fears of how am I going to pay for it? How am I going to be able to afford that change? How is my body going to respond to that change? And the moon is the collective. So I'm having a really strong feeling that whatever wild, crazy shit is happening at the end of the end of April, this is like the government slapping back and being like, we're raising rates. We're not going to be giving out loans. We're limiting financing altogether. And finally starting to possibly kind of tackle debt issues.
What do you think about Governor DeSantis speculating that after midterm elections there'll be more restrictions, and then
100%. Yeah.
And then Dr. Fauci kind of like saying there might be more restrictions after. So
well, just Jupiter and Neptune aligning in itself tells me that invisible worlds, invisible viruses, global expansion, global travel, but also dissolving our ability to really feel like we have freedom, there's no doubt that that's setting up. Remember that the second half of 2022, we see the return of the Saturn-Uranus squares. So yes, there is more restriction coming. I've kind of gotten a lot of slack for saying that, but I keep telling people...
At higher degrees, too.
Yeah, if it's not the pandemic, it's going to be something else. It's going to be, oh, well, we have to save the planet, or, oh, well... gas prices. There's going to always be something.
Because they've established that precedent, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now they see that a lot of the world will get in alignment when they do kind of tighten things up. But I, for one, hold a lot of space for the Saturn-Uranus square later in the year, although it's very tumultuous to watch that square kind of wrestle and go back and forth. I know that ultimately what needs to stay, especially in society, will, but when people need to stand up and they need to be fighting for more freedom, Uranus is going to help us do that. Remember, the North Node is meeting with Uranus later in the summer. So when you talk about midterm elections, when does that happen?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought
either.
it happened already.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to say end of July going into August, it's like that's when the shit really hits the fan,
Right.
when Uranus and the North Node align. But that's just like when it's like, oh my God, everything's changing, just in general. So that's kind of the jump off point for everybody later this year. Are you looking it up?
So basically, midterm elections. Oh my God. Why am I not getting a straight answer? When are... Oh, okay. It looks like November 8th, 2022.
There's an
Scorpio
that's an eclipse.
season. Yeah.
That's the other eclipse is right around there. There's one the end of October, and I think there's one right around that date.
And these elections are going to really sneak peek the 2024 elections. So they're very pivotal.
And keep in mind, guys, next year Saturn goes into Pisces, right?
Are the midterm... Yes. The end of the world. The beginning of the
and
end.
Saturn won't conjunct Neptune, but it'll be in the same sign.
Yeah.
And we're going to see the nodes go into cardinal signs.
To me, that's the end of the veil. It's like cutting the veil every
Yeah.
30 years, reinstituting a new veil or whatnot.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I, for one, I don't think it's going to take that long. Like, I don't think they're going to sit around and wait until November to have more restrictions and limitations.
Yeah,
I don't.
too.
But I do think there is going to be some form of limitation socially until the Venus retrograde in Leo in 2023. When I've looked at that chart or those
In
transits,
Leo,
when
damn.
that Venus retrograde kicks in, I think anytime after summer of 2023, we experience more freedom, personally.
I like that. And then, yeah, because it's going to be King Konging Saturn at that time then, so.
I mean, what do you think about the fact that it's out of sign, but the moon does trine Jupiter in Aries, and Aries is at 0 degrees, 0:59 obviously, but it's at 0 degrees.
Jupiter, right?
Yeah, Jupiter in Aries.
I see that as the official start of a brand new cycle. 0 degrees Aries will always be the same, like, correlated to the Boston Marathon bombings to me. Just even if there's no bombings, just something as shocking as that. So, like, I mean, we're entering a new karmic cycle. It's gonna retrograde August. It's gonna go back in November and then come back out next year. So this is gonna be the time of our lives before we even, like, there's so much newness that we're not gonna be aware of that's happening until next year that we revisit. Because while it's happening, we're not gonna see it as new before it really picks up. So I'm really excited. I'm more excited about that than any other aspect because it's completion.
I just don't think, I mean, I've looked at the chart a couple times. I've like glanced over it, but it's just mind-boggling to me the amount of aspects that Mars is making. The Mars-Neptune conjunction makes me feel like there's going to be a lot of people jumping in and like that we're going to see, you know, the aftermath of certain events where maybe we see, you know, large numbers of people coming together and offering aid or service, especially to people who are sick or who are, you know, have been affected by war or been misplaced. And I think we're going to see a lot of people who are fighting for peace or they're fighting to try to keep the peace.
And that's the most important thing because people are going to be fighting for false narratives.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be the retrograde Mars in Gemini where you realize you were fighting for a lie and it unravels.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty. Versus those who see through it now, and that'll be victory. You'll be pushing forward.
Yeah.
So it's a mutable sign split decision.
Yeah.
That the eclipse will force you to make. And it's going to be a continuation of decisions you made 2020. So we know what you're going to decide.
Well, and the fact that this is playing off the eclipse, I mean, the sun is right around the same degree that we had the eclipse in November, around the 19th. I think it was like 26 degrees. So now the sun's back, so we're going to see a physical manifestation from that eclipse. The moon is opposing it. So naturally, there's going to be like this peak moment, as with all full moons, but really, it's like whatever you were starting to kind of really bring together, you know, in the fall, now it's like the true test actually comes in mid-May. So it's like, okay, this is what you were doing. This is what you were bringing together. This is what you thought brought you value or security or stability. Now with the squares to Saturn, it's going to be, is it bringing you security? You know, is this really freedom? Is this really your goal? And how serious are you about obtaining your goals to the point where you're willing to overlook like monetary gains, I guess, right? Or just anything that is going to give you something in the meantime. It's like a lot of people are going to have to grapple with, I think, making difficult decisions about what they need to give up in the moment for long-term security and stability, or where there's been toxic patterns and habits that have been going on that has actually kept people from security in general. I mean, this is coming from a Pluto in Scorpio. I feel like the Pluto in Scorpio generation, Uranus in Scorpio, Saturn in Scorpio, if you have any of these placements, this is going to be a bit of a turning point that's like, oh shit, maybe I'm the toxic one. Like, maybe I've bought into this Kardashian lifestyle of like the drama and the gossip and like always having to live in a state of just like being wrapped up in crisis and like
feeding into drama.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's something that everyone in the collective can relate with and can really work towards not only uplifting out of that, but that's the revolution of the individual, drawing away from these collective narratives and social expectations. And with the Pluto Sag generation and beyond, pushing forwards a new individuality, which pushes forwards a new society as we hold space for these suffering Saturn Aquas coming into their return who were born with the square to Pluto because no one knows the pain they're going through. Just basically being rejected for knowing everything that's been going on, but having to still carry that.
You've had that transit the last year, huh? The Saturn square Pluto. Yeah.
No, I'm Saturn Cap.
Yeah, but you're natal Pluto.
You're
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I have. No wonder. I didn't even realize
I think it
that.
was like we kind of skated by a little bit more because Jupiter was there.
Mm,
So the Jupiter Saturn,
That's why I didn't
it
notice
wasn't
it as
as
harshly.
heavy. Yeah, but you know, it's like Saturn's still going to retrograde and it's still probably going to aspect Pluto, and it's going to be harsher for those who are born in like what 89 and 91. It's going to be a little bit harsher for you guys this time around because Jupiter is not in the mix. But you know, the Mars Neptune in Pisces, which is really, what are we fighting for? Are we fighting for a just cause? Are we fighting an invisible battle? Are we fighting something that's like being orchestrated intentionally, or are we letting it go? I mean, the Sun in Taurus is basically saying whatever crisis is going on for you mentally or emotionally with this eclipse in Scorpio, get into nature. Like, go ground your energy. Like, go and spend time hiking. Go and spend time gathering food. Go and spend time, like, creating an environment where you feel in control, even if the world feels like it's spiraling.
Exactly.
Right?
And this is intuitively guided action, too.
Yeah.
And that cycle that we're kicking off versus the last time Mars was in Pisces. By the way, last time Mars was here in Pisces, we did have that Seattle skirmish where, you know, so we're revisiting that. We've seen BLM activists revisit the George Floyd murder with their, you know, $1 million homes they raised money from. Congratulations to them. So, you know, this is another revisiting of the cycle at the end of the decade that I think is going to activate intuitive abilities in the Pluto Scorpios, Pluto Sages. It's going to awaken more completion or evolution in the Pluto Libras, Pluto Virgos, especially Neptune Scorpios, because that's that full trine. So I think we'll see that kind of turn around and just more grounding in metaphysical sciences, that now we have internet and revisiting what you said before relative to now that we see more effects of like these frequencies and everything, and with TikTok engines, I think collectively we're all going to come into a new scientific discovery.
I'm hoping so, and seeing that there can be space where like science meets spirit, you know, I'm hoping for that. But I also have this feeling that, I don't know, this eclipse makes me feel like it's strange that it's in the middle of May, but the veil is very thin.
Yeah.
With the Mars Neptune, with the trine to the moon, it's like we're going to realize that the spirit realm isn't like something that's like way out there in the ethers. It's literally here, just in another dimension.
Just like adjacent, right? Like
parallel,
right.
And the fact that like
But it's like here.
Yeah, it's physically here. So it's not like this otherworldly thing. It's like,
it's just an immaterial overlaying of this physicality.
Yeah, just that on top of the fact of, you know, the Mars Neptune is like very shamanic, you know, traveling and dream and astral projection. And I think of like, you know, soul retrieval work or hypnosis or like past life regression. Like, we're actually traveling, and there's a lot that's going on in other, I guess, higher realms. I
actually have chills because less than 2 days ago, I was watching this video about someone analyzing the Ancient One from Doctor Strange. And when she entered the astral plane, it was no different from the reality plane. Yeah. She was just there. And I thought that was interesting. It was a good visual representation.
And it's really wrapping up because we had Mars, Neptune, Jupiter, all these planets in the late degrees. I mean, obviously, this is after the eclipse, but Mars will go into Aries with the moon, and it will conjunct Jupiter on May 24th. So
it's a straight instigator.
Within 10 days of this eclipse, it's like, you guys are probably going to have experiences where you're like, I prayed for this. Boom. Here's my opportunity.
Right.
Or like, I saw this in a dream. Boom. Now it's here. I had deja vu. Now this is my sign. Like, this eclipse isn't going to fuck around. You're going to notice that literally within 2 weeks, there's going to be opportunities that are like, okay, are you willing to take action? Take action now. Remember, now we have all of these planets out of Pisces. Now it's all Aries and Taurus and Gemini, which is taking action, building it, and actually being about it and telling people and holding yourself accountable for the changes that you're making. Like, this year is going to be when 2022 starts.
I really believe
Yeah.
that, like, the Taurus and Gemini, like, Aries season had to really clear out the Pisces fog. Taurus had to establish everything. That late spring and the summer, I think, despite the bullshit that's gonna come, I think a lot of people be happy because it's just like a lot of personal sparks, new power. Jupiter is a whole chance. So, like, you're having to make instinctual risks that will pay off because they're true to you. And, you know, like, coming out of Nept, I love the analogy you said, because the Pisces aspect is you seeing the dream, it's adjusting your perception, and it goes in Aries and you move down that direction. So really be mindful.
What do you think of the fact that Venus is conjunct Chiron?
Okay, so I've actually heard in synastry, Venus, when someone's Chiron's on your Venus or vice versa, it's true love. So that's kind of how I see it in a transit. It's like bringing up vulnerabilities to heal, you know, this authenticity. So I feel like it could be like that kind of instance where, like, you're trying to act cool in front of a date, but then you fuck up and you look like a total nerd, but she likes you because you look like a nerd. You know, you're authentic, and it kind of like keys you into owning your own authenticity and your own vulnerability. So
I've seen some really great things happen for clients in transits when Chiron is conjunct their Venus. I mean, obviously, like, the first swipe or so is definitely gonna it's gonna, especially in Aries. I mean, just because of the actual cycle and the way that Chiron rotates, I think Chiron spends longer period of time in Aries than any other zodiac sign. And it's
even more than Pisces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's definitely got more it packs more of a punch in Aries.
That was when I first started to realize it doesn't stay the same time in every sign. I was like, wow, it stays longer and then super short in certain signs. That was the only planet I've seen, or point, or asteroid. So yeah.
Well, and now Chiron's moved up in degrees, so it's going to be in like the mid degrees of Aries. So that'll be interesting, just because it's kind of paving the way for, well, where can we open? Where are we afraid to open? And then here comes Mars shortly after. So there may be like really sensitive topics and like really scary things coming up that we have to deal with that pertains to like our own roles and responsibilities in love and in partnership, and where we're working through that. And I would say, you know, crisis can be an interesting opportunity in relationships in general, just to like really see what they're made of, right?
And that's the biggest like lesson I have concerning crisis. There's what we expect to happen. Like when you say the end of the world, we think it's going to be everything hitting the fan. And then the reality is like, that was pretty cool. Yeah. Like we didn't expect war to actually be pretty cool. We didn't expect, not like it was all good, but like it's way less worse than we're expecting.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways, like, you know, I can only speak for myself, and I've seen this for clients, but had it not been for the pandemic, like I certainly wouldn't have made a lot of life changes that I did that were as a result of the pandemic, at least in the spring and summer of 2020.
True that.
So it's like, you know, and we have a lot of people who have really strong...
I would have been in California, actually. I would have moved to Cali.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the pandemic.
Yeah.
I would be living in California right now, guys.
That's right. I remember talking to you and you were like, I'm coming back. And then I ended up moving here. Exactly. That's fucking weird. Yeah. That's so weird. Yeah, that's super weird. Yeah. I just think that, you know, it's going to be an important time to just really take stock in what is important to you beyond money. I think resources, because it can be a really beneficial relationship. It can be a really healthy relationship to yourself. It can be a sense of you learning how to be more practical. Taurus wants to simplify things. And I think that when we see an eclipse in Scorpio, we're learning that the more that we're going through the motions of just trying to simplify things and not making things chaotic, and if we wrap up all that Scorpio drama, then we can get more so into our body. I mean, just something that's come up for me a lot is like, you know, getting into the habit of telling people, like, that's not my reality. You know, like, you want to talk about politics, you want to talk about the end of the world or conspiracy theories, or you want to have all these like things where you're so addicted to the drama that you want to then take it to other people. So I found myself saying to people, like, that's not my reality. Like, I'm not building that.
Right.
And I have intentionally kind of set up at least the whole month of May, really the end of April going into the first week of May, of like just dipping out. And so it's just like perfect timing, I think, but also just letting the dust settle and seeing what happens. And I think the positive side of all of this is that within, like I said, about 10 days of this eclipse, once the Mars-Jupiter conjunction starts setting up in Aries, okay? Because remember, guys, it's 12 to Taurus, so it's something that is like a dream. It's something that's a personal dream, a personal vision, a spiritual lesson, but that's also happening globally. And it's also exactly 8 signs away from Scorpio. We have to face our own personal fears, and we have to acknowledge our own personal beliefs and desires in order to come into a new life.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And, you know, speaking of conspiracy theories, I think we're going to have a whole new wave of conspiracy theories.
Oh, for sure.
And they're going to be, and I'm realizing the beginning part of it is the juiciest, because the last time we were here, that led into the 2012 zeitgeist explosion of all these theories that like 40 to 60% of were kind of real. So, you know, I think this is going to be the dopest of the dopest. This is going to be a conclusion of theories people have had since the beginning of this country forming. Crazy shit. And I think the best part of it is it's going to debunk a lot of these theories. Like a lot of these open-ended theories are going to be severely debunked for good, which is going to leave room for the rest that aren't. And I see like a whole closure of like a whole bunch of just collective narratives that have swept and caused illusion for so many people. So there's, I mean, even though there's like literally dark forces finessing and psyoping the whole world with this great reset, I think there's so much individual power and good news that's going to help overturn all this over time. But, you know, this is the type of transit that in retrospect, you won't realize it's the stuff you did now during this period that led to the victory 17 years later, 5 years later, 2 weeks later. And yeah, for all this to kick off during Gemini season, post-eclipse, this is going to give us such a clear, you know, awareness of how to think about everything. That pipeline from Gemini to Virgo takes our individual thoughts to how we integrate them socially.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, given last year, 2021, where Leo and Virgo season, we were opposing those collective mandates. And I love, my favorite season, 2021, was Virgo season, because all the facts came out. Like,
yeah, well.
Yeah. So it's going to happen again, but opposite Pisces. And this is going to be that conclusion.
Well, Virgo season this year is going to be fucked, because we're going to be seeing Mars in shadow, Mars square Neptune.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Damn.
and we're gonna have Jupiter will retrograde back into Pisces. I don't think that'll be during.
Those are the final
season,
facts.
but it's like by the time it comes out, people are gonna be like, "This is 2 years too late."
Exactly. So like everything that you heard 2020, 2021 that was speculative is a fact now. Like it's either right or it's wrong. So
and a lot of the things that people were calling conspiracy really wasn't conspiracy. Really? Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. And what's come up, actually, ironically, is a lot of old videos from some of these people like Fauci and also other, you know, political talking heads and doctors and other people who have stressed one side of things, and it's been the complete polar opposite. So all of it's coming up in the form of interviews, videos, Pisces, right? So it's like the Virgo kind of like
Revenge of the Virgo,
you
yes.
know?
Revenge of the real fact checkers.
Yeah, I would just say that this is an eclipse that's going to test you and see, you know, okay, are there still monsters in the closet?
Or do you let collective narratives that peer pressure you into following? Because it's not about taking a side or not. It's about whether your decision to follow these narratives comes from you or you're being peer pressured. Because let's just be honest, a lot of people were peer pressured to make the decisions they made.
And a lot of people said that they didn't want to. It's because they felt like they had to. Exactly. So what I'm imagining is this is like the uprising that's actually going to come from, well, what do you mean you told me I'd have freedom if I did X, Y, Z? Or what do you mean you told me I wasn't going to have to do that and now I do? Like, somehow the status quo is changing after this eclipse, which in turn is going to affect money, resources, security. And I guess, like, the one positive thing is like, I kind of look at eclipses like this. It's like, okay, and this sounds totally crazy, but let's say there is this big reset coming, right? A lot of people are already riding that line of barely being able to get by. A lot of people are already barely able to feed their kids, put food on the table, roof over their head, whatever. So it's like, for so many people who are already like, well, you can't fuck us anymore, I kind of look at the reset thing as like knowing that they could push certain classes of individuals to the brink of going, hey, we'll offer you this bait. We'll clear your loans, we'll give you money, we'll put you on a government, subsidization, like whatever, if you're willing to sign up for this, passport, or if you're willing to get on this network. So keep in mind that there's going to be like carrots that's going to be dangled to see if you're willing to drift away.
And we know they already did it last year.
Oh yeah, you get a free cheeseburger if you get a fucking shot. I mean,
and they know what's working. And I love that you said that, because this is a collective board of authorities that have top-notch facts, statistics of demographics.
Yeah.
So to us, it looks like it's happening real time, but they've planned this.
I would just say
years.
Be careful, because
Right.
a lot of people will be led into temptation because of desperation.
Exactly.
And they'll see it as like, oh my God, it's a savior. So whether you're drinking the Kool-Aid in a cult, or you're going and being convinced to put more money into, the tray at church, or that you're willing to put your body up for the sake of science, like whatever it is, there is temptation coming in. And I would say that do not let monetary gains be something that pushes you to the point of going, yeah, I'll take that money, sure, okay, whatever, because there will be long-term repercussions, and they're going to be playing on people's psychological triggers very much so.
And you want to note how we're taking a more antagonistic approach towards this collective authority, because we're not saying it's bad, because things aren't really good or bad, but the last time Pluto was here, collective authority around the world was antagonized by individuals who said they were represented or taxed without representation. So we're seeing a repeat of this.
Yeah.
It's just, instead of monarchies, it's corrupt democracies.
Yeah.
So, it's not really sides going against each other as much as it is individuals banding against false collective authorities.
Yeah.
And that requires the Saturn and Aquarius collective test to come together, resolve differences against this division that's being made.
Well, and really ask ourselves, is making this decision actually really best for everybody involved? Because clearly those who have money or who are in power are the ones pulling the strings. So you got to ask questions, like when your government is saying, hey, this is good for you, we're doing this to take care of you. Like, that's where I kind of get iffy and go like, I don't really know about that. I don't really know if that's like the best for us, The
moon opposite, I think it was the full moon opposite Saturn and Leo. A cop tried to do me like that. Like, I was right. My apartment was there. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning. It was like there was no cars on the road, and I was crossing the street to go back to my apartment. The cop didn't know I lived there, so the cop had already passed by while I was walking across the street, and then I didn't even know it U-turned and tried to pull me over. I wasn't in the car, but it's like, sir, I saw you jaywalk across the street, even though there are no cars around.
Yeah. And
he was adamant that he was doing this for my safety. And I said, thank you, officer, for wasting my fucking time. And he said, I can give you like a $300 fine. I was like, are you going to give me a fine, sir? He said, no. I said, thank you for wasting my time. And I realized that opposition to Saturn was having to speak up against collective authority in a post-BLM climate, because I just felt like it was just bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that's how I feel about that.
Well, hopefully you guys fare well during this eclipse. Keep in mind you want to take a look at your ascendant sign. So look at where Scorpio is in your chart. That's where this conclusion, this major completion is. It's in friction to where Aquarius is in your chart. If you don't know how to find that information, check out a birth chart calculator online. You can find them for free, or you can hire myself or Mike to give you a reading. You can find Mike at The Peace Stealer. You can find me at Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. We both offer individual sessions for clients and consultations. We also have our own YouTube channels and social media.
And if you would like a exclusive reading from us once a month, level 3.
Join our memberships, bitches.
It's just right there, waiting for you to join us. Join us right
Join
now.
us. Join our cult. Welcome to the Midheaven cult cast.
Any cult you join, this one is actually for the kids.
This is a fun cult.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to force you to drink. You do it willingly.
Yes, exactly. It took me a second to get that. Yeah, I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that. All right, guys. Well, good luck. May the force be with you, and we will see all of you guys very soon. Take care.